Okay, terrific. I am so excited to see all of you under this theme of digital transformation together. And the conversation we're going to have is really about what this together piece means, because I think often the voice of consumer is lost in these very high-level discussions about digital transformation, digital public infrastructure, digital financial systems. We're all operating often at the 100,000-foot level, but how often do we ask what users want and need, especially the most vulnerable users? So I am honored and delighted to be having a conversation with Helena Leurent, who is the Director General of Consumers International, who is going to orient us in terms of the needs and wants of vulnerable consumers and just remind us that this is who we're trying to serve. And so being human-centered is our imperative and our call to action, in addition to scale and impact. So Helena, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Maybe you can start to give us a grounding. Talk to us about the reality of the vulnerable consumer today, and talk to us about what they're thinking when it comes to all of these lofty ideas. When it comes to their financial services, what do they want and need?
Brilliant. Well, so first, thank you so much. That last panel was fantastic as well. It's such a pleasure to be here, to be able to represent the consumer voice as well. So thank you, Payal. Let me explain sort of what on earth gives me the right to sit here and talk about consumers. It's because I serve an incredible organization called Consumers International. It's an NGO. It's a network in 113 countries currently. 200 organizations, each of them independent, each of them NGOs, each of them thinking about the experience of people in the marketplace in all sorts of different ways and fighting for their rights, because consumers have rights. We have needs that are defined at the United Nations. We have rights and we have responsibilities, and those things are changing. And we sort of, as individuals in this marketplace, are going through a heck of a lot of change. And a lot of the costs of that change risk falling on us, and we're confused. So there's a lot of work to do, and there are some amazing organizations out there. They range from, for example, Consumer Reports here in the US, to Choice in Australia, but then also in places like, I was talking to Togo yesterday, the group of organizations in Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan are meeting up today, and I'm talking by video. It's incredible. So there is unity and purpose in that. Now, we work across all of the sectors, so food, finance, fashion, energy. I mean, it's a big place, but finance, let's face it, it's at the heart of it. It's at the heart of it, and as you go through a cost of living crisis and we attempt to move towards a sustainable lifestyle, what does that look like? Now, so we're privileged to be able to dig deeper into that with support, and Eric is here from CGAP. We started this conversation a long, long time ago, and most recently with the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth. Now, what you're seeing now is, you're totally right, there's this sort of top-level conversation where we're moving ahead on all of these issues, and on the ground, it's scams and fraud. If you have been scammed, you are not alone by any means whatsoever. About 70% of people have been targeted. About a third of them end up actually being scammed. And a good chunk of people are totally ashamed about reporting that. That is everywhere. So scams and fraud, very much top of mind. You have the difficulty of getting your money back, redress, just the practicalities of getting redress. What's happening to my data? How is that being used out there? Can I trust? And then transparency, where are the hidden fees in all of that? Does it work? I mean, this is a lot of my question all the time, is like, top level, does it work for the person on the street? Is it easy? Are we making this, are we heading in the right way? And does it actually end up with them feeling financially secure, less worried, able to plan for their future, able to manage through shocks? What you really want, to get to your question, because I wanted to make sure people didn't think I'm just sitting here sort of, we're representing a consumer voice that needs to be heard much better, should be safe, right? We should know that your money is safe. You should get the right level of information. It should be secure. Increasingly, you should be sustainable. I would say it's more about resilience to shocks, right? People know there are going to be greater levels of shock, and transparent. And that is what our digital finance system in particular should be aiming towards. So that's what we should be building.
I think that's a really helpful grounding, Helena. And you've told us a little bit about kind of what they want. Are they getting what they want? And are they getting what they need when it comes to consumers, especially the most vulnerable?
Right now, no. And I talked through some of the things that we all experience. When we look at what happens for the most vulnerable consumers, so they have some form of access, but in some way, shape, or form, they can be defined as vulnerable. That might be women in rural areas. It might be people with a certain income level. It might be people with disabilities. It could be, there are a variety of different types of ways in which vulnerability can occur. And let's face it, all of us, as you go through enormous change, can be vulnerable in different ways, right? So the nature and our understanding of vulnerability is changing. They are, in some cases, doubly open to these problems, right? So in the 8 countries we've looked at this year, your likelihood of being scammed is 53% versus 19%. Your likelihood of seeking redress is 66%, thereabouts, over 60% versus 30%. You are so much more faced with these problems, and the risk is, and this is the conversation we have amongst our members, the inequalities are getting greater because of this. Trust is being undermined, and people are being headed into a downward spiral if we are not careful, if we don't build this well.
I think those are some quite sobering statistics in terms of how vulnerability is actually being exacerbated as opposed to addressed. How do we reorient the conversation to actually bolster resilience and ability to weather those shocks?
Yeah, well, one, conversations like this, I think I cannot tell you how rare it is to be able to bring a consumer protection and empowerment voice into the conversation, and it's often a sort of a bringing the realities in as we build. That's so necessary. First, I think there's something about having a mindset here. Let's bring the conversation away from, all right, well, consumer protection is this thing that'll happen in the back, when the lawyers get to it. It's this is the next generation of consumer care is thinking this way. And there's a whole sort of vast realm of innovation that we can build around it. It's really exciting. So one is the mindset. I'm an ex-marketer, so I sort of, I look back and I think, oh my goodness, I wish I could go back to business school and sort of relearn some of this, because this is next generation stuff. Secondly, though, when we build systems, build with consumer in mind. Right, so it's very much in the design phase. If we're thinking about digital public infrastructure, right, which is the hot topic, where's consumer protection in that? Where is the representation of consumer needs? I mean, representation in all its forms is absolutely crucial. The view of a consumer thinking through, using these services rarely gets heard. And we've got some great examples of what can happen when that works. That has to be local. That has to be with the community. In Nigeria, for example, our member CADEF there has done incredible work with financial literacy and also gathered evidence and also influenced the policy framework there. Likewise in Fiji, 10,000 people educated this year, plus has influenced the ombudsman policy in their country. I mean, it's really exciting to see what you can do within the system. And then I think there is a piece which I invite I think we're exploring at this point, and I invite anybody who would be keen to do this with us to connect. It's that nature of vulnerability. How do we really measure, track, have a different view on what vulnerability means, track the outcomes then, not just the access. So what does this look like for me as I go along my consumer journey? Businesses are great at that. Are we measuring the outcomes to ensure that we get to that financial well-being, health, secure foundations for my future?
You asked a lot of good questions, so I almost feel like I don't need to be the moderator. You can ask yourself the question and and then answer it. So I want to double click on a couple of the questions that you brought up and put you in the hot seat to answer them. One is, you make a really important point that I think is kind of top of mind for everyone who's been in all of the various UNGA meetings and events this week, which is we have to design with, not for. So how do we design with vulnerable consumers? What are some practical and tactical ways we can do that? You've got a lot of influencers and ecosystem builders in this room. So what would you tell them to do when they leave this room and think, okay, I have to think about vulnerable consumers now?
Yeah. I get very excited about this topic. I'm a newbie. My background my background is in food systems and energy systems, and so this sort of world of finance, where actually all of our members have been steeped for decades. But coming into this, that the opportunity in the conversation is fantastic. So one, I think, is. And actually, you mentioned influencers, and I'm just going to pick up on that because it's another piece of this. Where do people go for information? Another point about vulnerable consumers is they will feel they don't have the right information to be able to make choices. A third of them will go to financial influencers online. So this sort of sense of how you create a surround sound for people with information, I think, is fascinating as well, and it sort of expands the conversation beyond those who provide digital financial services to a whole range of different services and situations for the consumer. But that goes off on a tangent. Actually engaging the consumer, it's more than just measuring but let's start with the measuring. Let's actually track. Let's find ways of gaining insight from people and their experiences. It's very rare that people get asked about their experience in digital finance in a way that's relevant to them. It's often sort of related to a specific brand or a specific experience. We don't have enough detailed information to be able to understand what's happening and over time. Some of the questions we've been asking this year with your support, I think, are some of the first time those questions have been asked. So one is obviously measuring. The second one is engaging groups in the processes for design. We have looked at the experience of our members. So these are trusted organizations in their country or in their region. On food safety, on product safety, they will very frequently get pulled into a variety of conversations about policy design, about business service design. They'll be part of the ecosystem in talking about, well, what's the reality for people on the ground. On digital, that is less the case. It is less the case. And it's not because you have, lack of technical ability or lack of capacity. It's really because we haven't built that conversation. We're talking different languages still. And that is a gap because we could be doing so much together. One of the pieces of analysis we did was look at when there is really strong engagement between consumer groups of different types and regulators in a variety of forms. And that doesn't mean that that relationship is funded. It just means the conversation is incredibly good quality and regular and at meaningful touch points. The state of consumer protection as a whole is better off. And in fact, there was a link to levels of GDP, but so it brings that level of engagement brings real wealth. So if we can build that sort of conversation truly as we build out financial systems and digital systems, we will be so much better off. I think that the answers are in there, and we are excited to be part of trying to work out how that evolves.
No, absolutely. One of the things that we talk a lot about at the center, well, two things. One is kind of the need to be able to blend that touch and tech. And I think what often happens is that we over-rotate on the tech piece, forgetting how touch can help drive feedback into the process. The second thing that we talk a lot about is this test, learn, and iterate model. And what I'm not seeing in digital public infrastructure, digital financial systems, is this feedback and iteration loop. Have you seen where it has happened, where consumers have been able to provide their perspectives, to provide their input, and help governments and other stakeholders iterate the system so that it serves them better?
Yeah, and I'll mention briefly, we have a network of 65 of our organizations in low and middle income countries who have banded together, they learn together. That is precisely to be able to provide feedback into the system as a collective and also at national level. And what you can see is not always that they will stop things from happening. They will say, actually, this works great. And in some cases, the businesses in those markets will be like, well, I'm not sure we can do this. People, I don't know whether it works. And the consumer feedback will be, it does, this is great. It can accelerate. It can accelerate innovation as much as, it can be really positive.
Terrific. That's really helpful. I want to. We're coming up on time, so I've got a couple more questions for you. One is to pick up on your point around measurement. I know Consumers International is doing a fair amount of measurement in this space, and you've given us already some compelling numbers, but give us a sense of what your measurements are telling us in terms of what outcomes are being delivered and what outcomes are not being delivered. We've obviously touched on vulnerability as one that's not quite being delivered yet.
I think in general, there is a good trust level out there. So when you ask consumers, do you trust digital finance? Do you trust what is happening? Do you trust the marketplace? That engagement is still there, but it is declining because of what we talked about in terms of scams and frauds and just the difficulty of making these systems actually work for us. I think the measurement of along the consumer journey, not just that you have access to the system, but then that we are looking at, really for a specific consumer segment that may be more vulnerable, that they are able to use it for their desired outcomes. Redress, again, I would say, is one thing that we need to keep a very, very close eye on and be able to understand, is it becoming easier? In Mexico, for example, you cannot ask for redress online, is my understanding. You have to go and do that in person. We should be able to see that this becomes much easier over time and across borders.
Really helpful. I want to end with action. So you've got a lot of folks in the room who, again, do have influence and resource. What would your call to action be to them? And maybe you could make it quite tactical and concrete. We know that the macro call to action is get consumers involved in the process and let them help you iterate and innovate. but what else can this audience take away with them?
Well, one of the things we would like, thank you for taking that big picture there, because I think it's an essential part on so many of these topics that we're talking about all the way around New York this week, whether it's sustainable consumption, whether it's digital rights. Everything is sort of, we are moving at speed at a high level, but where are we bringing people along with us as an individual in the marketplace? I have one piece of for us this year is very important. We have now a group, and a fantastic group of our members who are mobilized around the world to look at how we build a guiding star for consumer protection in digital finance in particular. We have gathered evidence from all around the world on this. We've looked at the landscape, the policy landscape. Very few countries actually have any form of policy on vulnerability, and there's an opportunity to build that. We've looked at the experience of consumers in digital finance and asked them directly. So we're now building this, what we call a guiding star. I think we could ask you, what would is there a better name for that? But we would like to build that with others, and I would very much like to invite those in the audience who'd like to be part of building the guiding star with us to join in. And that will help us as we then go to the United Nations, as we go to the G20. My team is out in Brazil literally today. We would like to make sure that we have the strongest possible, powerful voice of what consumers need to join this story. So help us build it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think everybody has their marching orders. Helena will be around ready with a sign-up sheet for all of you to join this Guiding Star Coalition. But Helena, thank you so much for everything you and your organization is doing to lift up the voice of vulnerable consumers. I think we can all agree that you have all of our support.
Thank you. And thank you, Payal, and thank you to all of you here.